Ann Park, and I am the career strategist here at Blueprint Career Services, and I'll be the moderator of today's panel discussion. So just a few housekeeping items before we begin. Please keep your cameras off and your mic muted during the entire panel session. Any questions that you might have, please write them in the chat and we'll get to them at the audience Q&A portion of today's panel discussion. Please be respectful of the opinions shared at today's session in our efforts to be inclusive and non-judgmental. This session is being recorded and we'll be sending it to our participants later.
Hello.
So
Hi.
please,
do you mind transferring me to Dr. Rupi's office?
I think they are in the wrong section.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Dr. Lupal or something? Is it Dr. Lupal?
Maybe Carla can respond to Melissa.
Yeah. What's his name? Kibby?
So now I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Now I'd like to turn it over to Terry Lynn Hewitt, one of our guest speakers, to do an African acknowledgement on behalf of the City of Toronto.
Thank you, Anne. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly forcibly, displaced Africans brought here as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. Today, I pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. We share these acknowledgements separately to acknowledge the distinct journeys of both Indigenous and African peoples in these lands. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry Lynn. I really appreciate that. So now we're going to introduce you to our esteemed panelists today. And in no particular order, we have Andrea Davis. Andrea Davis is currently working as an employment counselor or advisor at the neighborhood group Community Services, St. Stephen's Community House, which is a provincially funded employment program. Andrea has provided extensive personalized employment counseling and facilitation for over 15 years to learners within government-funded initiatives and for a provincially based program in Vancouver for international professionals new to Canada. Her experience includes individual coaching, referral, at the same time taking into account an exceptional level of integrity, sensitivity, and understanding with issues of concern to a diverse client population and their specific employment needs. As a career counselor, she has witnessed firsthand some of the challenges of job search and the current labor market. She thrives at connecting people with the right services and information and treating people with dignity, respect, professionalism, and she values the learning she gains from doing so. Next, I'd like to introduce our next panelist, Arif Rahman. Arif currently works at the Malvern Family Resource Center as a supervisor for their newcomer and settlement programs. He is a successful career specialist and employment consultant, worked with Employment Ontario funded programs for more than 10 years. As a program manager, member of Ontario College of Teachers, guidance counselors, and as a motivational speaker, he has a tremendous track record. Arif has great relationships with many employers, community agencies, and academic institutions across the city. Arif's academic background includes a master's degree in human ecology, a Bachelor of Science degree, and a Bachelor's of Education degree from Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. One thing he enjoys about his professional role is the opportunity to use counseling as a tool to create a turning point in the lives of unemployed individuals and students at risk of career failure. Arif started his career as an assistant manager with a tea production company in Bangladesh. The two weaknesses he got from his first job: number one, Arif became a compulsive tea/coffee drinker, and number two, he became a lyricist whose songs were broadcast on national TV and YouTube. Check it out, everyone. He still loves to write and drink at least 4 cups of coffee/tea a day. Welcome, Arif. And last but not least, we welcome our esteemed panelist, Terry Lynn Hewlett. Terry Lynn is an Afro-Indigenous, multiracial, 2S LGBTQ woman with a visible disability with vision loss, and she is a screen reader user. She uses JAWS. Terry Lynn works at the City of Toronto in the People and Equity Division, Diversity and Inclusion Unit, as an accessibility talent specialist. With over 20 years of employment services experience working within the cross-disability community as a vocational professional and manager, Terry Lynn has been a strong inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility advocate throughout her career and in other areas, including post-secondary education, workplace accommodation, sports and recreation, access to accessible information and technology. Terry Lynn continues to work toward improving the quality of life, security, and freedom of people with disabilities through accessibility and equitable employment opportunities. Terry Lynn likes movies, music, summer patios, and exploring through staycations and traveling abroad. Thanks, everyone. So if our esteemed panelists can turn on their cameras, and we're gonna turn off the PowerPoint for now. So now I'll get to our moderated session of the panel. So I'm gonna ask my first question to the panel. My first question is, what is your story? Why did you take a break from the world of work, and how did you transition back? So I'm going to ask Terry Lynn this question first. Would you mind, Terry Lynn? We'd love if you can answer this question for us.
Thank you. Certainly, during my early employment years, I was doing a lot of precarious work. So I had some gaps in between. You know, when you're starting out, you're doing the retail and the host and the server you're just trying to get your footing. And then, of course, there were times where I did take a break out for taking care of family members. I had a brother that I was taking care of. And also, you know, throughout my, my career, even when I went back to university and then came back out, I was taking contract to contract positions. And that's when contracts were really starting to be a thing. And so in between those contracts, I had some breaks in between. So in that time, I also, you know, sometimes I took any job just to make sure that I was still working, so I didn't have such large gaps in my resume. And I also did that because, you know, obviously for financial reasons, I needed to work. It wasn't an option for me not to work. And then also I knew that if I continued, you know, if I took on other kinds of types of work, I would be able to gain references and other experiences, because, you know, as you're starting out, you're still, I don't think it's just starting out, but you feel it more when you're starting out. You're thinking, you know, how can I build my employability skill sets? And then all the way through, you know, your work career, you're considering the same thing. How can I advance to the next level, or how can I improve this? Or maybe you're feeling a little anxiety around doing presentations. How can I increase that comfort level? So I think really when it comes to precarious work, or when there's gaps due to health or rehabilitation, or just simply that your contract is ended, really just to encourage people to make friends, try to enjoy as much as you can of the journey. And I know it can be, like a heavy load. Sometimes it really depends on everybody's situation, because some of us really need the money, or we have children that we're taking care of, or, depending on the factors of what your situation is. The gap can feel daunting. So I know that we'll talk a little bit more about that, but for sure, just managing the feelings around the gap that you have, I think is really important in terms of how you move forward back into the world of work. Now I'll turn it back over to Anne.
Thanks for that, Terry Lynn. I really appreciate your insight, because it's often, in the world of work, people don't take that into consideration, like your feelings, and like how you manage those feelings when dealing with these gaps and during this transitional period. So thank you very much for that. Andrea, would you mind, what is your experience taking a break from the world of work, and how did you transition back?
I'm going to take a bit of a different approach of my gap. I guess about 30 years ago, I had grown up here in Toronto, but was living outside of the city near kind of Collingwood before it was discovered, in a small town of about 1,000 people. I got divorced. I came out, I'm queer. I came out, and that process of doing it 30 years ago in a small town carried a lot of risk, right? So in fact, I was taken to court for custody of my kids because I was gay. And then I needed to go back to work, so I had no income. So I ended up on Ontario Works. And that whole process kind of was the initiator. Plus, I was involved in community initiatives in a rural setting, which is quite different than being in an urban setting. So I was volunteering. I ended up on Ontario Works with both my kids. So that was the start of an interesting journey of navigating systems. One of my kids had special needs. So we ended up having to come back to the city where my family was to get that support. The first job I took was a cook, because I thought, oh, I love cooking. I think I'll be a cook. And then I cooked. And was on a shift from 7 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, because that was the job I had to take. Leaving kids at home when they were quite young. It wasn't illegal, but they kind of had support. But learning that, and then one day, guests complained that I left the old chicken bone in their meal. So I was fired and I was stuck. So what do I do, right? No income, student loan, all those things, trying to navigate. And I asked a friend, and she referred me to an employment service called Times Change Women's Employment, because I had gotten, previous to that, I had gone back to school and got a women's studies degree, but I also had a Bachelor of Sociology. So I thought, okay, I got to do something. I took this career planning course, and it was such a catalyst for me, right? To just take some time to reflect on what I needed, what would fit for me. I thought, okay, I've done all this advocacy work for women and violence against women work. And I thought, oh, I want to be in a shelter. But being in that group, it was 15 women, was probably the most supportive process I've ever been in, right? Because we supported each other. There was a range of people. You got to discuss options. People reflected back to you what they thought you would be good at, because they got to get to know you. So I volunteered, got interviewed for a job and got turned down. 2 weeks later, the person quit and I ended up with a job. And that's how I ended up in this field. But I think part of this has always told me how to learn how to navigate systems, just because everything is so overwhelming in job loss or job transitions. I think a lot of times processes aren't conveyed to people, right? And I think if you engage people in a collaborative kind of process, it works. It can help people get there. So that's kind of my journey. And then I just went from job to job, learning on the job, getting people's stories, which to me built my knowledge base, right? And as Anne mentioned, I had worked in Vancouver for about 7 years. So that was a really profound experience working with all international professionals, because I learned so much, right? And I'm one of these believers that you learn through people tremendously and through their experience, and that I can convey to other people. So I think that's it. Thank you. Nice to see everybody here today, by the way.
Thanks, Andrea. I really appreciate that. I think that you brought up some very good points as well. So, and absolutely, it was very humbling. So, with regards to responding to gaps in your resume, learning how to navigate the system, to me, it means a lot, right? So, connecting with the right people who can set you in the right path, and finding a community of people who can provide you with support and can help you to maintain your motivation. And really taking the time to getting to know people's stories to find out how they were able to navigate the system and how they were able to connect with different jobs. And to also, by finding out people's stories, you can find out, okay, now that I have this gap in the resume, I mean, it certainly can be a barrier, but on the other hand, it can be a sort of like a way to transition to new jobs. And by hearing about people's stories, like Andrea suggested, it can help you to determine your next move. And also that helps you with networking. So thanks very much, Andrea. That was great. I really appreciate you sharing your very inspiring story. Arif, what is your story? Why did you take a break from the world of work, and how did you transition back?
Thank you, Anne. And I'm so moved by what Terilyn and Andrea said. And I would like to say, I have so many holes in my resume, so many gaps, because I changed my career 10 times. Even I didn't believe in career in my life. I believe career is a 21st century wrong concept. It's not helping everyone. But now I have a different view I can share later on. But I have changed my job more than 10 times in the last 20 years. And I resigned 6 times. And then I was almost fired 2 times. Almost fired. So then I changed my career path 4 times. I was studying science, then again arts, then commerce, then I started my business. So much of things I did. Why did I do that? I followed my passion. To be honest to you, that was not right all the time, because career is something you need to secure your economic security for yourself and for your family. So I adjusted, I comply with reality. And now I'm doing a career from last 3 years. And before I start this career, I had 3 years gap because I resigned from my last job. So now what I wanted to say, everyone has gaps, everyone has holes, but as long as you have a good story, could be true or could be creative, but you should have a story, then it's not a problem. So gaps, I don't think that's a big problem. We can easily overcome. If some are struggling, contact someone who can share their own story and who can find a path to overcome. And again, follow your passion is a good thing, but again, you have to think twice, because following passion, I can tell my story. I was a writer. I wrote 400 songs. And if you ask how much did I earn? Not even $20. Not even $20 in total in my life. So I traveled 35 countries. I lost all of my savings. Now, still I have my commitment to my family. So I adjusted. What I wanted to say, I was successful because I have a great story all the time. So all of my gaps, people will listen to me. And at the end, they will make a decision because I am able to create impact to their human brain to make a decision to hire me. So I would say, everyone has a gap. Don't worry. We can work together. Thank you, Anne. Back to you.
Thanks, Arif. I really appreciate that response as well. I think it is very important that you brought up, I think it's, as someone with gaps in my resume too, everyone has had some kind of gap. I mean, it's hard to think of, there might be a few people, but it's extremely rare, and everyone has their own stories. And it's connecting with the right people and sharing those stories can really help you. With regards to some stories we don't want to share because we're concerned about the response and people's, might have certain reactions, but that's when, we reach out to the right people who we can trust to get their feedback, to connect us to the right opportunities so that way we can overcome this gap, which again, so common, like probably everyone you're going to talk to has some kind of a gap in their resume. So thanks very much for that, Arif. So let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, from your personal and professional experience, because all of you have so much experience supporting people with gaps in their resumes and helping various communities to secure employment, supporting those who took a break in the world of work, what are some of the greatest misconceptions and challenges about returning to the world of work after taking a break? So we're just going to go in the same order as before. Terry Lynn, would you mind responding to this, please?
Sure, absolutely. I just wanted to say, I really appreciate what the other panelists were talking about, because you really need to ask yourself, how important is work at this time for you? I mean, and for all of us, we're going to answer that question differently. And I love the comments around the passion and telling one's story, and, and in through telling your story, and you're putting that little personal bent on it, as well as how you're marketing yourself and how you're marketing your skill sets, really encouraging you to have that plan. Because in terms of the question, I know that we're thinking that if you've had a gap, you'll be able to hit the ground running. You'll be able to just do it, and you'll be able to learn on the job. If you have had a gap and if you haven't really done very much in between, I feel like that might be a little bit of a misconception, and that all of my problems will be solved. So, whatever mental health issues or stressors that we have, sometimes we think if we just get the job, then everything will be fine. But, when you do have a gap, sometimes, finding that routine can be tough. You're having to schedule yourself. Time is different. Getting up in the morning and, making sure you've got clean clothes and food, and all of that can really take a toll, like just getting back into the swing of things. So really paying attention to that in terms of your job preparation and your job search. I know it sounds like a small thing, but it is actually a thing that, getting to work on time, taking into account that you want to resource yourself with the people emotionally as well as professionally, and as well as your friends, to kind of help bridge those gaps in terms of employment programs that can help you to build your confidence, or give you that space to practice and help you to teach you how to outreach. Because if you've been out for a little bit, speaking and communicating and how you outreach is a little different, especially in the last few years, doing virtual, maybe you're doing virtual coffee chats for your information sessions, or information interviews rather, or, as opposed to calling people on the phone. So that's a whole other way of building your network and outreaching to people than just calling people on the phone. You get to market yourself in person, how you present yourself through camera and all of that. really connecting with your community, I think is also really important, because they can give you some of the tips and the tricks if you have been out, especially in the area of interest, because if you're, you can find those buzzwords. If you're talking to professionals within your field, then that will also help you to become a little bit more connected. I would also say that because it can be anxiety provoking, I think for everyone looking for job is hard. It's hard work, but try to enjoy the journey. You're going to meet a lot of great people, and broadening that professional network, and try to take some of that anxiety and the stressor off by seeing everybody as people. Generally, people want to help other people, and you really want to try to find that balance between work and being professional and being well prepared and building your confidence as you go, and really acknowledging the successes that you've had along the way, because it's not just about the job. It is about, I really scored it. I talked to that person, I reached out, and the conversation went fine. It went more than fine. Like, they gave me another lead, and really pat yourself on the back for that too, because looking for work is really hard. And then at the same time, I just wanted to say that, make sure that you've got your own personal network as well. So as you're professionally prepared and you're building your confidence, also have your friends, your close friends, where you can, really let loose and say, I need a sounding board because I feel like I didn't do so well here. But go to people who are going to help build you up. And I just kind of wanted to leave it there, but really just be kind to yourself, but also have a plan. As the other panelists saying, have a plan to help you bridge that gap, because don't think that once you get the job, everything's going to be all sorted, because there's a big, huge learning curve for all of us in that first 3 months of starting a job. That's why it is a probationary period. So whatever's happening for you right now is going to still be happening for you on the job with all of the other responsibilities. So it's always great to participate in those job preparation programs, because that really helps to get you in a routine, and thinking about the things that, like scheduling in your calendar, how to use a calendar, like these little things are really what's going to help to make you when you do get the job.
That's great. Thanks, Terry Lynn. It was so inspirational. I think you touched on so many wonderful points. So, definitely transitioning back into the world of work is really tough, like into the formal world of work, I guess, so to speak. And you need to acknowledge that, like getting back into those routines. But what you need, absolutely, you need to surround yourself by friends, not just anyone, but just people who are going to help boost you, and celebrate those times that you were able to you had the courage to even make a phone call to connect with someone, because it is true, like during the job search, we're often it's just a feeling like we're being rejected. It's not like that, but it often feels like that, right? So just celebrating those times that you're able to take that next step, and enjoy the journey, because this is your opportunity to learn, like during this gap and through the process, learn, connect with people, but really honor your feelings and self-care, right? So that's a lot of what you're talking about, and absolutely, I agree with you with regards to people actually do want to help. And I learned this great little metaphor. It's like asking someone for directions. Like, how does it feel when people ask you for directions? Like, are you going to say no to them? Sometimes people do, but I don't know about all of you, but it feels pretty good. So it's the same thing when you're asking for help, like Terry Lynn's saying, it feels good. So thank you, Terry Lynn. That was wonderful. Andrea, what would you like to add to that? Some of the greatest misconceptions and challenges about returning to the world of work after taking a break.
Terry Lynn, yay. You hit a lot of really great points. I would just like to add on, and I think just in the work I do and in my own personal life, the pandemic has had a huge kind of effect on everybody. And there's also the reality, and you mentioned it, Terry Lynn, about food insecurity I see and housing, the price of housing, right? So these are real issues, especially now that people are hitting. So I think be kind to yourself, be super, super kind. And if you're reaching out to a job coach or anybody, find a match, find somebody that works with you, that you feel like I've got a really good vibe. I can trust that person. I feel like I can be honest with them, because it also helps me too, right? To get a full story if people want to disclose those things, because then collaboratively I can help. But I think the pandemic taught us, like, what do we really value, right? Because a lot of us were at home, sheltered. You had to reflect on what was your own personal situation. For me, initially, we had no clients because we were kind of transitioning to a virtual world. But I learned so much online. They said, oh, watch a whole bunch of webinars, do what you want. During that time, I was so grateful because it was the first time I could stop in about 15 years and actually learn for myself, right? And I watched so many webinars. I connected to this one organization called Center for Young Black Professionals. And it was so inspirational to hear the folks that attended this place, to hear their executive director speak. There was another place called the Gerstein Center, and they provide mental health counseling. Like, even though it was a break, it informed my counseling, right? And informed my information. And I think it was also a time that I had to stop and reflect upon myself, right? And what do I need? I also dealt with some accessibility needs and still am during that time, like physical accessibility. And I think people, it's so hard because you may have a short-term goal, like I need money to pay rent, I need money for my food. We can help you with that. Like, we know, like, yes, you need a job right away to do that. But long-term, can we be looking at a bigger plan, right? So that it keeps moving. I don't know. I think there's a lot to be learned online, but it is a confidence builder. But I really think if you can, when you go into interviews, interview them too, right? Read about, sorry, read about folks online. When I'm looking at companies, I deal a lot with nonprofits or even big corporations, and I click on their board of directors and I see what's the demographic of the board of directors? What's the demographic of the staff? If I see like 20 boards of directors and they're all, the same gender, same cultural background, how am I going to fit in, right? Because I've dealt with aggressions in the workplace. I don't call it microaggressions anymore for being gay. I call it macroaggressions. So you have to find a fit for yourself. At the same time, and Terry Lynn, you mentioned, be kind to yourself. If you can, do some recreation, do some kind of sports, do some music, whatever. Those are networks, right? Those are networks. Everything that anyone you talk to, could be the person at No Frills, is a network. You want to make connections on every level. And if you're joining a music club or doing music with somebody, inevitably they're going to say, hey, what's your name? Oh, it's Arif. What do you do? I do some music. Oh, cool. These are networks and you're going to feel good. So don't always think in that stream. My network has to be business. Like, it's just to get information. And I'll use a little bit of humor here. Anne knows me a bit from working with her, but I live near, I work near Bathurst and St. Clair, and there's a little park that joins there. And my coworkers are always making fun of me because I network. And one of my coworkers was walking through the park one afternoon and came back and she said, Andrea, you know what? All your business cards are all along the path from the Loblaws all the way back to the center. And I went, oh my God. She said, I know you like to network, but this is a little too much. So I guess I had a stack of business cards in my pocket, which I usually do, not a stack. And I put my hand in, of course, they fell out. So that's me. But I just think networking, I've learned so much, right? And I just think like it's so invaluable, right? That, and it can fill you with, I think the main thing is some confidence, right? Do I feel safe? Do I feel confident? I know it could be hard, but I got a path of some kind of thing. So that's my take. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrea. That was great. I really appreciate those points that you touched on. So as and some of it overlap with what Terry Lynn was saying, it's so important, with regards to be kind to yourself. We know that it's hard out there, but do what you can to do things that are enjoyable for you outside of looking for work, because dealing with the gap in your resume and looking for work, you need that balance, because if you're not doing anything that's, where you're kind to yourself, you're going to go into your interviews, it's going to come across, as hard as you're working to get that interview. And, with these gaps in your resume, it's a good time for reflection. Again, I know it can be really challenging because it can be very financially difficult for a lot of people. And you think, how am I going to get over this? But like what Terry Lynn was saying as well, it's kind of like a gift in a way. It gives you a chance to learn new information, connect with people. And as Andrea was saying too, the networking piece is huge. And the networking sounds, it's a word obviously, but just chatting with people, do what comes naturally, because like you never know, the person that you're in a book club with, or that you happen to talk to at the park because you have a dog too, or a kid too, they're part of your network. And talking to people, definitely that's a way, because Andrea was alluding to respond to that gap, to help you to achieve your goals. So thanks, Andrea. That was wonderful. Arif, what are some of your opinions with regards to misconceptions and challenges about returning to the world of work after taking a break?
Thank you. And I think Terry Lynn and Andrea, I spoke my words, everything, but I like to add a few things about the misconception. Like, that employment gap, I think not all employers they care about. I would say some employer and maybe some recruiters, especially from HR background, they are trained to see where are the gaps, and they try to see the risk of hiring, nothing more than that. But I can tell you a funny story, but true story. If you ask Bill Gates, who would be the best candidate out of thousands resume, he will find the laziest person. Laziest, because all laziest person has a way to overcome the problem in a shortcut way. So they will invent something, they will find a way to be successful. And that's true. So now Google, Microsoft, they don't care about your gaps. They just care about your story. If you can come up with a story, and I can tell you, if you're trained by someone, even with me, your story would be good, because you need to know how to come up with a story. And I can tell you my story of networking. I attended a seminar that I need good networking. So the next day, I asked the bus driver, TTC driver, hi, how are you? Can you give me a connection that I can be a teacher? I wanted to be a teacher and I'm connecting bus driver. Do you think this is a successful networking? No. I should connect a teacher. So networking has also a kind of a misconception. You need to connect someone who can help you, who is able to help you. I was asking my next door neighbor, hi, can I get a job as a teacher? That guy was a police officer and he had no clue at all, but he was a gentleman. He wanted to help me. So that's what I'm saying. So much of misconception regarding our career, and career is already a misconception in the society. So I would like to say it again, only few employers care about your gap. You come up with a nice story and be honest and sprinkle some hopes. Put some positive spin on your story. And if you don't know how to make a story, and I'm not talking about a fake story, that's your life story. I can tell you, my first job I got because I was a writer. And my passion really worked well. But the next job, I used by that experience. Oh, I am a writer, I write music, and I am a traveler. I visited 20 countries. I lost that job. That guy thought, no, this should not be the right guy for me. You see, the same story cannot work for each and every career. So you should have a real story about yourself. And at the same time, you have to be realized that career is connected to your economy as well. Is a finance, is a financial security. It's not only your passion that you like to do. It's a balance. So again, don't worry about gaps. There are thousands of ways. And connect someone and put someone in your network today. And I don't know, how is your LinkedIn profile? Search for good people. Even you can connect us today. That would be your opportunity. And one of us can help you. That's what I like to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Arif. That was really great. So I really appreciate that you point out that a lot of employers don't even care about the gap in their resume.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of misconception, that.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell.
Yeah,
Even
absolutely.
this job, they asked me, Arif, what happened with your last job?
Yeah.
And I answered, I resigned. Well, why did you resign? I started a business. What's wrong with your business? I failed because of COVID. But if it was not COVID, maybe I could redesign my story differently, because it was a true story. I tried 3 years and I failed. And they offered me this job and I'm very successful now. So right now, I should not be worried about my gap. But again, I have a pattern in my career. I never last more than 3 years. So probably I'm resigning this job too. And then I should have another story soon. And maybe I need to contact Andrea.
A witness.
Yes.
A witness, Arif.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I wanted to also add something that as a person with vision loss throughout my whole working career, I also had to share or ask or request for workplace accommodations. And my workplace accommodations would cost up to $5,000, like right off the get-go. So really what Arif is saying really hits home with me, because how do you sell yourself in an interview? And even before, even pick up the phone to call employers, knowing that I got a tag of $5,000 if you hire me, but this person over here, you hire them for free, right? Like you're going to hire them. And so the story is a real thing. I mean, if you can share your story, personalize yourself, if you are funny, terrific. If not, sharing your story. And then also, ending on the high, just like Seinfeld did, right? Ending on the high with your skill sets and what your results are and how you're able to do this job is really part of that story. So whenever I had to share, I needed, like when I was partially sighted, I needed a CCTV to read printed material. I needed voiceover. I needed Zoom text. I needed all this stuff. But I also was able to share at the end of it, but at the end of it, I was able to, work with a caseload of 200 people. I did workshops. I did this. So I really honed in back on the skill sets, the 2 or 3 top things that they might have been looking for in that role. So exactly like Arif said, just pick the skill sets that are in line with that role. So if you want to make it relevant. So you've got lots of experience, which is, fantastic, but remember your audience and who you're talking to when you're bringing that personal story and so it's possible. I've been registered legally blind since 11 years old, and so fortunate for me that through my whole entire academic life and career and jobs, I've always been accommodated with no issue. So not everybody has that, but I can tell you that being able to tell a story and to interview, and learning that, it was a learned thing. It didn't just happen. It was a learned thing, working with Andrea, Reef, people like that to help me present myself, really helped me out.
Amazing. And I like to appreciate these things and want to thank you especially. You mentioned if any employer hires you, maybe $5,000 costing will add it, but you may add the value 5 million to the organization.
Yes.
The same thing happened
totally
to me.
agree.
I lost my job with one organization. I'm not mentioning the name because I had a heart surgery. And then that heart surgery was a kind of a strength for me. When employer asked me, why should I hire you? I added, if you hire me, you will only add maybe few days sick day, nothing more than that. But I can add $1 million to your company, $1 million. How? And I exactly brought that million. My all experience, my all passions,
exactly.
and I know the art of communication, the art of convincing people, and I'm a fighter. So I fight, and at the end I win. So I will train the whole organization how to win. So thank you so much. Even, sometimes we feel, no, I should not bring my health issues. Health issues could be your strength in life, because that's what we learn. So that's really amazing. And we don't need to hide anything. But again, it's up to you. You are the owner of your resume. That's the number one. So if you want to hide, that's up to you. Nobody should argue. I can tell you, my name is Muhammad Arifur Rahman. If I put my whole name, I get 50% less call. I don't know why. But if I put Arif, I get more calls. It's proven. So I don't need to go for any data. If I change my name, even Ari, A-R-I, I get call 90%. But again, I'm cautious to say, okay, I don't want to make a judgment here, but I'm telling you, you are the owner of your resume. So come up with your story and still be honest and be ready to tell your story. That's it. And thank you, Terlene,
just
again.
wanna
You shared your
ask-
story. Yes, Andrea, go for it.
Sorry, Reef.
No,
Yeah, one thing I want to add on to is working with international professionals, because I'll get the resume, I see it, and then I see them and I go, I think you have more experience than what I'm seeing on this resume, not to make assumptions, but, I took all that experience from back in my home country off. Put it on, and be proud, be proud, be proud. I was born here, settler. I don't know what that experience is coming to a new country, but be proud of who you are. Be proud of that experience that you have. Canada's a limited market. We need folks, right? Good employers need your market. They need your connection. They need your language skills. They need your cultural understanding. So put that stuff on your resume. Can we frame it a little different to say, like, give a description of your company so I know what your company's all about, but tell your story and be super proud. And I think, like, these days, and I totally agree with Arif and Terry Lynn in dealing with, for me, accessibility issues physically that affected me mental health wise. Now I walk in and say, you take me, man, because if you don't take me, someone else is going to get me and you're going to lose. And, we're good, right? And you're good too, right? And there's value in you, right? And corporations need that, and companies need to be pushed. Like, for me, dealing with invisible accessibility issues, you can't see my rotten knee, but can it push somebody to think about how they're setting up desks, right? Oh, we want everybody to do this, virtual versus home. Employers are learning stuff, and even with folks that are trans, right? People need to be accommodated, right?
Sure.
What are the questions that you're asking on your interviews? Do you need more people looking at those questions, right? How are you even phoning people to set up an interview? Are you asking about pronouns and those kind of things? What's expectations of dress? I used to think about that going into interviews. I worked for the AIDS Committee of Toronto as a volunteer.
Yes.
And similar, Reef, I thought, what's the implications of those things on my resume? Do I take it off? Do I put it on? I was questioned in an interview about being gay, right? And those affiliations by someone who was interviewing me. And so, and now it's just like, okay, take me, right? Because you need me. So feel proud, right? I know it's hard. I know it's not easy. Yes, I know discrimination is out there fully, like a Reef is saying. That's up to them. But I'm just saying, like, impassion yourself, right? And with this journey of mine this past year, I have learned so much about systems in hospitals, systems about accessibility, systems of mental health that I thought, oh my God, I used to see all these clients 4 and 5 years ago. Now I understand, right? So will that inform my practice more? Will that provide me more? The person across the table, will they go, oh, she gets me, right? She gets me, right? And is there trust? And I think trust is a huge factor for all of us.
No, you're right. I like to add another things. I couldn't resist myself. And it happened with my last employer. Like they recognized me something. Arif, you look very familiar. I saw you before. It's a very personal. What should I answer? Then I took the right way with my honesty. I mean, say, yes, did you ride a back taxi ever? Well, yeah, I always take back taxi. I mean, say, I was your driver. And that was, you know, who? At Center for Education, Jim Fremlin. And I got the job on the spot. Can you believe that? So sometime I'm saying it could be personal because you are non-judgmental, but employer is judging you. So you need to win. And there is only way you have to come up with your story. And at the end, you have to ask yourself, are you helping the employer to make a decision to hire you? Otherwise, they're going to hire somebody else. So I cannot lose here. It's a game you have to fight. That's the way it goes.
I love how you guys are all talking about how you're looking at your transferable skills, reframing, but you're reframing in this professional filter. We always have a professional filter, but you are still being human, personable, talking about your transferable skills, really fleshing out those pieces. And then as you're talking and communicating and connecting with people, you'll hone in more of those skills. It's just like when we think about all of the friends we have around us now, at one point they were strangers. So there was some awkwardness or there was something that was a little different until you built it up into the friendships you have now. Professionally, the same thing will happen. If you've been out for a bit or there's a gap, as you're broadening your networks, the same thing's going to happen. The first 3 or 4 times, it might feel a little awkward, but after a while, you start to, okay, it becomes a little bit more natural and you're able to incorporate and hone in on your skill sets are improving. It's both your soft and technical.
And in fact, the other day I saw on someone's resume, he put from whatever it was, 2020 to 2023, had to return back to his home country due to health concerns with his family and helping them with business. And that was just a small line. I went, oh, okay, cool. Now I know. And I thought that the same with, I hate to say it, women who are at home, building families, you know, like the time out, right? That's valuable time, right? And, you know, there is going to be prejudice against folks. I know that, right? That's a given, but you know, I think things are changing slowly, slowly.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you, all of you sharing sharing your stories and your feedback on all of this. I definitely think that, you know, some of the things I was thinking about as you were all chatting, you know, having a story and sharing it and really focusing on what you have to offer, not what your concerns are with regards to gaps in your resume, and really, you know, selling that story. And if you feel comfortable, as Reef was explaining, you know, letting employers know, okay, this is, if they ask, this is why I have a gap in the resume. And of course, being realistic, there are lots of judgmental people out there who may not hire you for X, Y, and Z reasons. But my question is, and it makes me think about what Andrea was saying before, like when you go to an interview, you're interviewing them too. But my thing is, would you really want to work for these people anyway? If they're going to turn you down because you identify as a member of such and such community, or because you are off because of whatever reason, so because even if you got in there and you kept everything a secret, who knows? I mean, if they discriminate against you, people who are, have taken time off for various reasons, it's probably likely to discriminate against other people in the office, and it probably guides a lot of the work that they do. So, and in terms of those stories, definitely reach out to professionals such as our wonderful guest panelists today and us, because we can help you to refine those stories and to feel comfortable sharing them and learning how to market yourself effectively. And there are just so many reasons, especially, the pandemic, it's true what Andrew was saying, like a lot of people took time off because they were caring for because a lot of women in particular took time off because they were caring for children, or, maybe other people in their lives that they were taking care of, or people took time off because of school. But these are all valid reasons, just a matter of connecting with the right people, telling your story, and really feeling confident to present yourself and getting help as needed, because I know it's easier said than done, like especially from professionals like us, but that's what we're here for, right? That's what people like us are here for, because you can't do this alone. No one can do this alone. It's not just about applying for jobs online. That's not what's going to happen for you. It's very rare. But I feel like I'm dominating a lot of this. So let's move on to our final question before we move on to questions from the audience. I can see some really great questions out there, so I don't want to forget those. Just sort of wrapping things up with the planned questions of this panel. What is some last sort of advice that you would give to individuals who are dealing with gaps in their resumes to stay motivated and inspired to continue to reach for their career goals despite having these challenges? Because it's easy for us to say, yeah, just stay motivated, go out there, but it's really hard. And there have been so many times in my life where I've dealt with gaps in my resume, where I have been let go, where things have happened, and it's been devastating for me, and it's been really hard to stay motivated. So I'd love to hear from all of you. How do you stay motivated? How do you stay focused on achieving your career goals, even though you have this gap in your resume? Anyone who'd like to volunteer to respond? No particular order. Whoever would like to share first, I'd love to hear from you.
I would say the first thing I would say is, breathe. I think all of us have been saying, be kind to yourself during this time, because it can be anxiety provoking. You're assessing them, they're assessing you. So, really breathe. Building confidence during this job preparation and job search time is absolutely normal for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're at the entry level or at a high level. And really, I would encourage you to really watch your negative self-talk, because that's a real thing. Sometimes you're beating yourself up because you're not at the skill level that you want to be at, or you feel like you are and other people aren't recognizing it or valuing it. Like we were talking about before, that some employers don't even respond back. You can feel isolated or like you're being neglected. So really just watch that the past doesn't impact how you're moving forward in the present, and to really not let the past negative experiences change how you move forward. You want to move forward with openness and flexibility is what I would say. Again, we talked about the importance of connecting with a job search program, whether that's just to check in or to keep the fire under you, even if you're at a higher level and you know what you need to do, or maybe you do need some assistance. There's nothing wrong with having somebody take a second eye at your resume. We all need it. I need it. Even when I was looking for work, I still would do exactly the same thing. And then resource yourself with the people properly. Like if it's a disability related question, then talk to somebody who has that similar disability or who's in that position, who, you know, maybe worked with people with that similar type of disability. Or if it's a professional question about skill sets, so kind of know where you need to go in terms of resource. If it's just a matter of you need a sounding board just to get it all out, there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, just again, you know, really be kind to yourself and support yourself. Don't ask somebody who you know is going to have a negative bent on things. That's not what you need at this time. What you need is, I don't think you need like that inspiration. Maybe sometimes you might need inspiration and motivation, but to be able to sit in where you're at and be present and just kind of, I've been reading Eckhart Tolle, and his, he does a lot of, you know, the power of now, and it may not be for everyone, meditation but really trying to find the gap between you and what the negative thing is, the thought or the feeling, so that you're not taking it as personally. That will leave you more open to finding creative ways to get around some of the things that are happening, so that you're not taking it personal. Because really, once you start taking it personal, then it can be a negative down spiral. So really just trying to remove yourself a little bit from what's happening. And I think finally, just to kind of conclude, is plan, you know, make a schedule for yourself, treat it like a job. Imagine that this is a job. So if you're looking for a part-time job, put in those part-time hours, scatter them around if that's how the job would look. If it's a full-time job you're looking for and it's a 9-to-5 job, then you put in the 9-to-5 hours and treat it like a 9-to-5 job. You know, you're going to do some research, you're going to read some newsletters, you're going to make some phone calls, so like these are all skill building and confidence building, but it's also teaching you how to work for yourself. You're going to work to work. So I would encourage that kind of, you know, make the commitment to yourself and know that, you know, this is what success will potentially, you know, look like. Those are some of the things that I did anyways that really helped me. And you know, I hope that some of the things that I shared today and that we all shared today will help you and help build your confidence and help you move forward in a good way.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Terry Lynn. I really, those are such thoughtful responses. I'd love to hear from Andrea or Leaf. Who would like to respond next?
Yeah, I totally agree with Terry Lynn again. You got to get a buddy, you know, that person that is there to support you, right? You know, pre-interview, post-interview, through this whole process, because the negative self-talk can be easy. What I did was make a playlist. So there I am with Beyonce and what's her name, Lizzo, pounding down the street. So I can imagine what my neighbors think as they see me rocking my head. But it makes me feel good. And it's so interesting, like within 5 seconds, like music can change just that piece, whether you're inside or outside. One place I would recommend, like if you're, because I see a lot of comments in the chat about workplaces. If you're worried about like rules and regulations in workplace, there is a great place called the Workers Action Center. It's at Bloor and Spadina. I've been referring people there for years. It's funded by the Canadian Auto Workers, so there's no affiliation with any government. So you don't have to be worried about calling in and saying, here's what's happening in my workplace, or I have a concern because I have this, how will I be accommodated? They'll have someone to speak to you and they'll follow up with an employment lawyer at no cost. Please, please, please contact them for anybody. And it can like calm you to know, oh, okay, I'm not wrong, right? This shouldn't be happening to me, or this did happen to me in a workplace. I don't want it to happen again. What else? I would say webinars, engage in some webinars. You know, during the pandemic, everybody was putting webinars out there. So if you're interested in certain associations or companies, follow them on social media, and they're putting out webinars all the time. Yeah, 90% may be boring, But if I get one thing out of a webinar or I make a connection with somebody, it didn't cost me anything. It's really useful. And the last thing I would say is the Toronto Public Library. Check them out. And if you do a search on the Toronto Public Library, and I think it's, you put in LinkedIn Learning, there's tons of courses for free, all kinds of computer courses. And also, like, you want to do film editing or sound editing, think of things you like to do for fun. And everything is on there. So check things out for yourself, for your kids, for your family, but it's a great place to learn. It's all video, so you can do it piece by piece by piece. So it's a way to fill in gaps.
And do you mind if I jump in? I loved everything that Andrea was saying. When you go to these webinars and if something resonates with you and you're on LinkedIn, or if you grab their email, shoot them an email. It's a way of broadening your network, and just give them a, something, share something that resonated with you, because who doesn't like a pat on the back or thank you for that presentation? It's a nice way to make a connection.
Yeah. And then that's the advantage to build on LinkedIn, because you see that person maybe there and can say thank you. And I'll tell a quick story about an architect I worked with. He was, I think, initially from Iran and worked in Malaysia. And when I initially met him downtown, he said, "Do you want to see my portfolio?" And I went, "Yeah, sure." And he had a paper portfolio of his work. And I said, "Well, it's great, but unless you get an interview, how is anybody going to see this?" Right? So he built his portfolio online, and it was incredible, like incredible $1,000,000,000 projects that he had been doing, right? And that the nicest guy ever. And then I set up some information meetings with him with different art.
Andrea might have that.
I love
internet issue.
Frozen. Andrea warned us about this mid-story. Hopefully she can get back in shortly. But in the meantime,
Am I unfrozen?
Oh, you're back.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so glad to see you again.
You're back.
You know what I mean?
No one's ever called me the Little Mermaid. So
Andrea, can you share the rest of your story? So you connected this gentleman.
yeah, so I connected him and we were doing information meetings, right? And just the nicest guy. And I said, "You need to send them some thank you notes afterwards." And we were discussing, he says, "I know what I'm going to do." And he went down to the art gallery and he bought gift cards at the art gallery that were beautiful designed cards. And afterwards, he sent the cards to the information meetings. So no one gets mail. It's like Terry Lynn said, some acknowledgement. He sent the cards out. One was to an architect up the street from mine. And I said, "You know what that's going to be like? Someone gets a beautiful card and they're going to sit it on their desk with a beautiful design. And you're that constant reminder in their face, whether something comes up, right?" This guy is now, I don't know how long ago this was, 8 or 9 years. This guy is now in a high level position with the city of Toronto. But it was just this little thing that we thought of, and his confidence when he was crying, when he was talking to me in my office, to like, "I got it, right? I just got a few things and now I feel empowered," right? And it's great to see, but sometimes those little things can make a difference, right? Unfrozen, off to Hollywood. I'm not going to wear a dress though, I promise.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm glad that you're in Frozen. I'm glad to see you moving. And thank you for that response. That was wonderful. Arif, what would you say to individuals in terms of how they should stay motivated and get going?
I like to add, I think that Terry Lynn and Andrea said enough for the motivation part. I like to add, like as I mentioned, nobody should be worried about gaps. And at the same time, everyone should be careful about the gaps, especially when a job seeker apply online. Application goes through a ATS, application tracking software, and application tracking software may have that bar. So their responsibility to find out the gaps. So we should be very careful. And at the same time, if you can create your LinkedIn profile or even online portfolio that can cover your gaps, even you are applying online, you have less chance to speak. So you need to be ready with your storyline somewhere. Even, employer may not call you. They will just go into the LinkedIn profile. And if you go my LinkedIn profile, I believe I have a little story there. So they're gonna be seeing something. Okay, Arif is not like a regular guy. He has too many gaps. And I can tell you one interesting story. Sometime you need a gap on your resume. It looks like weird, but you need a gap on purpose. Sometime you need to fire the employer. Even you need to do this on purpose. I can prove it. I had a gentleman. He was not getting any job 3 years just because of one employer on that list on the resume. So whenever he mentions that employer name, automatically it comes as a reference, and that reference was really bad. So after 3 years, we come up with a strategy to fire the employer forever. So we removed the employer from the resume, and there was a gap, 3 years. And we created the story, the true story. And now he is one of the vice president with RBC Bank. So if someone has a similar trouble, please contact me. I can bring this gentleman as a real life example for us. And I can tell you, sometimes a story can work like magic. Even that gap, it was mentioned on the cover letter. So there is something I like to explain, and that was the main reason I didn't include. And that's the gap. So please call me. So I'm just asking employer to call me, check with me, because I am the right guy for you. And especially the recruiter, they like this kind of approach because they're gonna make money on you. Any job seeker can do the work, that's more than enough. So that's what I'm saying, if you are applying online, you have to be very careful because you have less chance. And don't apply to the same organization again and again. And at the same time, before you apply, you
Unless
should
it's the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless it's the city.
Exactly.
You have
And
40
before-
different divisions. Keep
Yeah.
applying again and again.
And again, if you apply, then do some research about the organization. Don't just make a decision for a next move just to create another failure in your life. Don't just bring any failure. So we need to be very cautious. And I think there are some questions, maybe someone is asking, if I have several jobs in 6 months, that's an easy fix, very easy fix. Just talk to a job developer or career counselor. It's an easy fix. But if you have a pattern, even like I can tell you, if I have a criminal record, still I deserve to get a job. And I have that success rate. I got the job for a guy who has a criminal record, and then he went back to jail again. But still, if he comes back, I will help him to find another job, because top of everything, everyone deserves a job.
Exactly.
But you need to come up with a story, nothing more than that. Thank you.
And one quick thing, because I know we're getting to questions, is passion, initiative sells across the table, right? If you're being interviewed, you may not have the skills that they need. And it's so hard. That process is so nerve-wracking. But someone may see you and they hear you tell your stories and they see who you are. And they'll say, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on Anne. You know what, she maybe doesn't have this quote unquote skills we need right now, but I trust her, right? I know I can work with her. I know she's done stuff in the past. She can bring it to the team. We can teach anybody, right? You can teach anybody these skills. I can't teach passion. I can't teach initiative.
Exactly.
Like some of those intrinsic skills. And that's value, right? That someone brings to a team. So in your storytelling, in your interviews, in your storytelling to your information meetings, it tells me lots about who you are. So what you say and what someone hears can be two different things. So think about that. Yeah. Guess we better get to the question.
And maybe another piece of advice, like, I don't know, that's my metaphor I use for my client. If you don't like to drink coffee, then don't get a job at Tim Horton. That's the bottom line. Because it should be, I'm not talking about passion, but you don't like coffee. then why are you in a Tim Horton?
Yeah.
Better go to
Exactly.
somewhere else selling burgers.
Apply with
Maybe.
intention.
Maybe. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that happens with
That
me
makes you
even.
funny.
I was like, doing something I didn't like. So now, before I blame the system, someone asked, like, is ATS is effective? No, that's not effective. But can we change the system? But we can come up with a story to change the system, maybe. System of hiring, system of making decisions.
Exactly.
Nothing else.
And someone also asked a question about folks with criminal records.
Yes.
We can work around that. And there's employers that places have connections with. There's agencies that are working with folks with that. Stuff happens, right? But I'm just interested in you getting the job, right? And it may sound easy, but reach out to people, right? Reach out to people and get some support, right? We're there to support you. And if I don't know, I'll reach out to somebody else, right? To get that.
Thanks, everyone. And so inspiring listening to everyone. Everyone deserves a job. Passion and initiative definitely comes through, and there are people that can help you out there, even if you're dealing with the gaps in your resume because you have a criminal record. That can be really hard to disclose that information to employers.
Yeah.
So I just want to be mindful of your time. We have less than 10 minutes. So I'm just going to get to the questions in the chat. And sorry if we can't get to all of the questions. You can always reach out to us later and we can do our best to answer the question, or you can reach out to our panels. I did provide their email address. So the first question I had from Dana, do you have any advice for getting an interview, especially after an employment gap, and considering that most job postings are online and don't give you very much opportunity to tell your story and show employers all your talents that don't translate well in a resume and cover letter? Thanks. So who would like to take this one? Maybe Terry Lynn, we haven't heard from you for a bit. I'd love to hear your take on this question.
I think a lot of us had talked about this and highlighting your skill sets in relation to that job. So really thinking about the job posting, targeting the recommendations or the requirements rather, and the job duties. So if you're looking at those top 4 things and really honing in on your resume. So when you're doing your resume, you want to make sure that the bullets are in a hierarchical kind of method, using that TAR method, like task, action, and result, always remembering the results. And I would recommend that whatever the top 3 things are in those requirements, have those bullets at the top so people can see them immediately. And in the cover letter, the same thing. So this way they're not having to look all over your resume to find it. And then just to share a little story, I've been working at the city now just for a year and a half, and our division is very new. So we were the diversity and inclusion division. Now we've switched into a new division. We're the workforce equity division. And when I applied to the city, I applied to a lot of different jobs at the city and elsewhere. It wasn't just the city that I was targeting. But the thing that got me this interview, or that got me the interview and the foot in the door, something for you to consider, is what we were talking about before about your portfolio. Andrea mentioned it, your story. Think about ways that you can bring your portfolio forward. So whatever that means for you. So if it's an example of your videos, or example of documents your work, or pictures, whatever it is that you do, or ways that you can express yourself and market yourself, do that. Because a friend of mine, I wasn't into the Zoom and the whole camera thing, and she's like, "Oh, you should do a 30-second commercial, and then include that in your cover letter or your resume, or put it on LinkedIn." And I'm like, I'm not putting a 30-second commercial of me on LinkedIn. Like, that's not happening. And so she's really encouraging me. Yeah, you should do it. You should do it. I said no, and I said, okay, finally, I said I will do a 30-second commercial. So I dressed up, I wrote out my 30-second commercial. It took me 8 takes. And I did it, and then I loaded it up into Google Drive and I wrote my cover letter and I included it in my cover letter. And I said why I thought I was the perfect person for the job. And then I said, here's a 30 second or 15, 5 minutes or whatever. I said 10-minute introduction of myself, and I hyperlinked it in my cover letter. And that's what got me the job. So Ronald, who is our senior specialist, clicked on the link and I presented my 30-second commercial. And I did actually do what Andrea had suggested. I looked in LinkedIn and they had all these different things of how to do a 30-second commercial. And I incorporated those things. And that's what got me the interview. So, I mean, even if you don't have something as a portfolio, as to say, because some of us may have drawings or something, perfect, upload it, incorporate it in there. I even in my resume, I even had links to documents that I wrote, program instructions that I wrote. So I linked it, hyperlinked it. So I encourage you to do that. There's ways that you can get around those gaps. Telling a story, using your portfolio, you can get really creative these days. Within the same kind of structure that, like, don't send a picture with your cover letter. Like, we're not doing that kind of thing anymore or at all. But there are ways that you can use the same kind of, 2-page resume, 1 cover letter. I know that us as employment, because I've been in employment services for 20 years too. So we have a certain way of helping you to market your skill sets, but you can be creative on the fringes of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful response. Thank you for that, Terry Lynn. We have about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to get to one more question. I really do apologize, we ran out of time, but I think that this discussion has just been so engaging and wonderful. So I'd like to respond to a question from Emily, who had a question about someone who can't tell their story when their story wouldn't necessarily garner a lot of empathy in certain sectors. So Emily works with people, you kind of discuss this a little bit, with criminal records and severe addiction. And oftentimes the career gaps are due to personal struggle like relapse or unfortunately being incarcerated, how oftentimes they can't be honest about that. So what should they do when you can't be honest about your story? Because there is a lot of judgment out there, in particular, if you have a criminal record.
Maybe I can, Andrea, you want to go?
I was just going to say one quick thing. One thing I've been seeing over the past 2 years in relation with folks with addiction issues is peer positions. More and more and more positions are looking for people with lived experience. So I see it all the time. So it's a way, there's programs that help. There's training programs that help with peer positions, but I think it just adds so much value, like anybody's background and understanding to someone they're supposed to assist. So you can go on Indeed, on Charity Village, those places, and put peer worker. And I just see more and more and more spaces like that in the issues. I don't know about human resources, but I think those things could help and inform people. There's also a place called Oasis. They're a nonprofit in the east end of the city, and they work with folks with addiction issues, right? Who have and can help them with employment. So there's lots of services, and I think, and I pray to somebody that more and more employers are getting more informed and taking chances, right, on people, right, and doing that. So I'll leave it to you, Arif.
No, you're right, Andrea. There are a lot of specialists, not for profit. They can help in this regard. But what I want to say, legally, there is no barriers except some of the employers. Only some employers. Most of the employers, they don't even ask whether you have a criminal record. So now, let's say you are applying for a job online. Traditionally, what we do, we go from our resume to the job posting. You have to change your attitude. First, read the job posting and then customize your resume. Forget about your barriers, at least for next half an hour. Forget about your gaps barrier. Just read the job posting and then create your resume. And you will see nothing is really asked about your criminal record or anything. Then, if you want to be honest, then prepare yourself with your story. You're going to get an interview call, I can tell you. So contact the right person. I think even, you know, that, what do you call, Howard Johnson or something? They have a very good services. Even I worked with them and we successfully placed people. Yeah, I think so. And also there are other 2-3 organizations, even we have lots of employment counselor with that experience. But I am asking, do and change your attitude going from job posting to resume, then application. Don't just think and don't be in panic. Oh my God, what will happen? No, remove this barrier first, that you have nothing in your head. You have a blank piece of paper. So see the job posting, write it to your resume. And if you need help, call Andrea, Arif, or Ann, whoever, and we are there for you. And then I can tell you, if you get a job interview, I can tell you, you're gonna be winning. There are ways. So unless you have that hope, and I'm not giving you fake hope, it's a hope based on reality, because there are employers waiting for you. There are at least 10 employers can hire people with criminal conviction. Again, and you have the right to get a job. Nothing wrong with that. And you should have a sense of pride that, you know, you deserve a job. At this point, I think I have no more answer, but we need to change our attitude.
And Arif, I had a client recently who had a criminal record and he's interested in working for a community organization, right? So I asked HR because I wasn't quite sure how it works. They said they go through the process, HR, they get interviewed, whatever. If it gets to the point that there needs to be some discussion, it actually goes to the CEO and the head of HR and they discuss it. Is this okay? You know, and they have a discussion about it. So I would say go for it, right?
And I love what you said, Andrea, in that if you're working with an employment agency and you're working with a caseworker who is really working with you, and that's why you're being selective, they may even help you to identify those employers or even make some calls to the HR departments as well. Like, you know, you got to share the load a little bit. Like you know, the more motivated and the more you're working, the more they're going to work for you too. So
exactly.
share that load. And I love how Andrea was saying how she, you know, you obtained the information.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's all about how you perceive this and connecting with the right people. And if I can just sort of add just one thing that hasn't been brought up very much in terms of gaps in your resume, volunteer. Volunteer. There's so many things out there. Do micro courses, you know, through U of T or anywhere else. But, you know, with School of Continuing Studies, we have tons. So, and I know that there is a cost, but there are free courses available there online as well. There are tons of free courses. Slap that on your resume. Where's the gap?
And especially the work at the city, we really encourage connection to the community. Working as a public servant, we want to see that you're well connected to the city and to the community rather. And so that looks really, really good on your resume. So, and I know that sometimes people think about, oh, I don't want to volunteer. I've got the skill sets, and that may be so. But if you do decide to volunteer to close the gap in your resume, gain a current reference, I lost my point there. Just know, be intentional with that too. Maybe there's areas that you want to further develop skill sets and share that this is the area you want to volunteer, a couple of hours a week, and that still doesn't interfere with your job preparation or job search. So be intentional with your volunteering to build those employability skills.
And also I like to add, as you mentioned, volunteering. Be careful also at the same time. Talk to your supervisor formally that you are giving time and what you will be gaining. It's not a free thing. So I'm just volunteering at the end, I'm not getting anything. No, then get out. Because
Okay.
your time is valuable. So make a kind of a deal. I am just contributing to your organization, so I need something at the end.
And
And
also,
even within that,
oh, sorry,
sorry, within that organization, the person should be entitled to be hired. If there is no opportunity, think twice. And it happened to me. I was doing something irrelevant volunteering, and at the end, it didn't help me. So don't waste your time. It should be a win-win, and it should be a gain for you. Thank you.
And Andrea, last comment from you, if you
and
don't.
I'll be quick, I promise.
It's okay, I love all this.
Sorry.
One other place to volunteer that folks don't think about is boards of directors of nonprofits. A nonprofit I worked for, I was on their board. It taught me tons. I was the client rep. And in places that are United Way funded, United Way, when they do your applications, looks at the demographic of the staff, the demographic of your board. If it's not diverse enough, they'll report. I mean, they kind of, what's it called? Whatever, they make a remark on it. But you don't have to be the vice president of something. Go on these boards. It is the most amazing place to network. But as I agree with Arif, find a place that fits your values. You got to do the research and you got to get something out of it at the same time. But don't feel intimidated, young or old, whatever. Just go and try. They're often looking for people, but it's a great place to gain skills.
Yeah, and network and boost your self-esteem. So absolutely. We're gonna wrap things up because we're 6 minutes over, but I love how everyone's just so passionate about this topic. And I learned so much from this. I hope all of you did too. So I'd like to thank Terry Lynn Hewlett, Andrea Davis, Arif Rahman. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an honor. It's been a privilege. And I hope everyone enjoyed our session today. As I mentioned, this session was being recorded, and so you will have access to the panelists' email address. You can reach out to me if you'd like to through Blueprint Career Services. We have some amazing workshops coming up. So we have Design Your Life, and we have the Clifton Strengths Workshop. Check them out, they're fantastic. But thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you. Really appreciate all of you being here. Take care, everyone. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.